Polling stations across the UK open as the country gears up for a historic general election.
Lithuanian and Polish defense ministers called EU and NATO support for the eastern border.
Thousands of demonstrators assembled in Paris to protest against the popularity of the far right. Polls have opened across the UK for what is being described as a historic general election. For months, opinion polls have centre-left Labour Party poised for victory, trumping the Conservatives' 14-year rule. The Tories have conceded Labour's apparent win, but are urging voters to not hand the party a supermajority in Parliament. Polling stations opened at 7 a.m. local time Thursday morning in 650 constituencies across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak voted in Yorkshire, while Labour leader Keir Starmer will cast his ballot in London. The centrist Liberal Democrats, environmentalist Green Party and Nigel Farage's Reform UK also want to sweep up disaffected voters. Voting is set to continue until 10 p.m, when the first estimated results based on exit polls are expected to be published.
What a huge opportunity.
With Labour tipped to enter government, the UK's general election could spell the end of Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives' controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. Labour wants to scrap the plan, which has been deemed unlawful by the UK's Supreme Court, and use the money earmarked for it to create a border security command to dismantle migrant smuggling networks. But a migrants' rights charity is concerned Labour will explore similar deals with other third countries.
We're obviously supportive of the Rwanda plan being scrapped in its totality, but we are concerned that an alternative will be brought into place. So whereas Rwanda is still a concern and has been identified as still an unsafe country for many individuals, we are concerned that another country will be considered by Labour, and we know this because bilateral agreements are already taking place. So we have bilateral agreements between Bangladesh and the UK to deport individuals, and India.
This Afghan asylum seeker whose family was persecuted by the Taliban says Rishi Sunak's plan would jeopardise his need for protection.
Good left this Prime Minister tell every people, new people here coming, no stay. I don't have give the stay in the UK. Send back the Rwanda. This is not good for me. Rwanda, Afghanistan, same for me.
Irregular arrivals by small boats across the Channel only make up 8 to 10% of migrant arrivals into the UK. Both Labour and the Conservatives have also vowed to bring net legal migration numbers down. There has been a surge in overall migration numbers since Brexit came into force in 2020, but both parties have different approaches on stemming migration.
So the Conservatives would look to restrict the supply of visas, and they would do this by putting an annual cap on work and family visa grants each year. For Labour, it's more about restricting the demand for visas.
Opinion polls show that among Conservative voters, immigration is the #1 concern. Among Labour voters, it's not even in the top 5 priorities. But the Labour leader Keir Starmer has understood that this is a hot political issue, and he has vowed to cut migration numbers into the UK. But with the country facing labour shortages in key sectors like healthcare, immigration is also part of the puzzle when it comes to restoring an economy that recently came out of a short-lived recession. Marit Gwynn for Euronews in central London.
Italy's five-star movement is asked to join the left group in the European Parliament. It comes as the populist party, who shared a group with Nigel Farage before Brexit, tries to find a home after a year without a group in the European Parliament. The left, aware of the party's situation, seems ready to welcome it on board. It is argued that both parties voted in the same direction on issues such as the Migration Pact.
No, all members of our group have to sign a so-called political affinity declaration, and we will discuss, of course, the political topics with them and see if they will fit in the group or not.
In recent years, the Five Star Movement tried to join the Greens and the Liberals, but to no avail. They were also in contact with the Social Democrats. This Thursday, the left will take its final decision. Despite its progressive outlook, the left has adopted a critical stance on the EU's response to Russia's war on Ukraine. Meanwhile, two co-presidents have been elected by the left, the smaller group of the European Parliament. French Manon Aubry and Germany's Martin Schirdewan were elected on Wednesday. The European Conservatives and Reformist ECR, the third largest group in the European Parliament, also elected its leaders. Italy's Nicola Procaccini and Joachim Brudzinski from the Polish party Law and Justice. Some MEPs were connected from Brussels. The development implies that the Polish have ultimately decided to remain in the ECR instead of joining the Patriots for Europe group of Hungarian Viktor Orban, with whom they have held negotiations. Lithuania and Poland's defense ministers have called for the internalization of the protection of the EU and NATO's eastern border. The joint call was made during the visit of Poland's defense minister and deputy prime minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz to Lithuania on Wednesday. Both leaders stressed that border protection remains a key task.
Państwo polskie razem ze swoimi sojusznikami zrobi wszystko, żeby jeszcze lepiej chronić wschodnią granicę Unii Europejskiej i NATO. To jest nasze najważniejsze wyzwanie i to wyzwanie musi być realizowane nie tylko przez państwa narodowe, ale przez całą Unię Europejską i wspólnie do tego wzywamy. Umiędzynarodowienie tematu granicy, ochrony granicy jest rzeczą kluczową. Unia Europejska musi zaangażować się w obronę swojej granicy.
The three Baltic states and Poland last week signed a letter calling on the EU to be involved in building an estimated €2.5 billion defense line along the bloc's eastern border with Russia and Belarus.
Thousands gathered on Wednesday in Paris to protest the results of the first round of the French legislative elections after the far-right National Rally Party secured the most votes. Multiple unions, independent media, and citizens' organizations were behind the demonstration, calling on voters to block the rise of the far-right for the second round of the election scheduled for Sunday. Many present fear a far-right victory could curtail civil liberties due to the National Rally's history of xenophobia and anti-Semitism.
Si demain l'extrême droite passe, je ne sais pas ce qui va advenir de tous mes camarades qui sont étudiants étrangers. Je ne sais pas ce qui va advenir de tous les Français binationaux qui vont se voir quand même stigmatisés sous prétexte qu'ils sont binationaux. On ne sait pas ce qui va arriver aux personnes LGBT, aux personnes racisées, aux femmes aussi, parce que l'extrême droite c'est quand même les ennemis de toutes ces personnes-là.
There is a chance that if voters mobilize massively, they could block the National Rally from winning the absolute majority in Parliament next Sunday. But voter fatigue is a major hurdle.
Je comprends qu'ils en aient marre parce qu'on a tous, on est tous lassés d'avoir fait les petits castors bien gentiment à chaque scrutin, mais que celui-ci il n'est pas comme les autres parce que là vraiment l'extrême droite est aux portes du pouvoir et en capacité d'avoir la majorité absolue.
However, not everyone present at the demonstration agreed with the general message.
Je pense que c'est un rassemblement qui ne reflète pas du tout l'état d'esprit des Français. Ce sont simplement quelques personnes qui se sont réunies, mais la France profonde qui est dans les campagnes, qui est en province, elle pense tout à fait autrement. Et elle est bien plus nombreuse que ce qui se passe ici.
More than 49 million registered voters will be heading to polling stations on Sunday in what could be a decisive election in French history. Sofia Katzenkova reporting from Paris for Euronews.
Joe Biden has announced that he will not withdraw from the 2024 presidential race. The incumbent US president has been under increasing pressure since his poor performance in his debate against Donald Trump last week. Democrats are divided on the question, with 1/3 believing Biden is too old and should not run for re-election.
I am feeling panicked. Certainly, like, laying in my bed at night, like, overcome with fear. I do not think that Joe Biden is the best person to be running in this election. I don't know who that person is, but I don't feel confident in Joe Biden's ability to win this election, and that makes me very afraid.
On Wednesday, Biden met with 24 Democratic governors, several of whom said after the meeting that the president was in good health.
Fit for office. The president has three and a half years of delivering for us, going through what we've all been through. None of us are denying. Thursday night was a bad performance. It was a bad hit, if you will, on that, but it doesn't impact what I believe. He's delivering.
According to the New York Times, Biden has told his close allies that he only has a few days to convince party members and voters of his fitness for office. If he fails to do so, his candidacy may be in jeopardy.
Travelers can now take a short international flight in an electric aircraft from the Maastricht-Aken Airport in the Netherlands. It's part of a trial where people can fly without emissions. These are flights of between 30 and 50 kilometers, and mainly business people are expected to use them. The Electric Fly project runs until the end of August. With aviation accounting for approximately 4% of climate change, some experts believe electrification is one option for reducing the environmental impacts.